Alright, so you have opened a brand new Blender scene. And you're like, huh, okay, where do I get started? That's what I'm going to try to help out with. Now, there's a couple things here in user preferences that are helpful, but honestly, I would not look too much into it because you're going to get bogged down. I wouldn't change too much at first, but just kind of leave a lot of the settings to default, but you can change everything from interaction to how things are input, like hotkeys and stuff like that. And one helpful thing is, like system. This region overlap is gonna um, allow you to see through some various panels. Not that important, but this cycles compute is pretty important. If you want to use your GPU, you can select it there. And then you have themes. You got all these presets, so you can just kind of mess around with them. But Elysium is the one that I like, personally. And then add-ons is kind of important because all the various add-on options that you can find online, and there's just a wealth of them out there. Tons of people giving you add-ons. A lot of them are just Python scripts. You can copy the Python script, save it in a text file as a .py, and then you can add them. Like I've got this screencast. I'm going to go ahead and install that one, and I know where it comes up. It's should be oh yeah, the you got to enable the add-on once you put them on. You just click on that, and if you want to save it so where it does it every time, you can click save. I'm also going to add that bool tool just to show it's a boolean type modifier or add-on somebody wrote. I guess there's two of them. Anyway, um, so that's really helpful, and I'm just going to screencast the keys. You're going to see them down here just so you can follow along. But the main thing when you start out here in Blender is navigation. So you can scroll in and out with your mouse wheel. If you click the middle mouse wheel, you can orbit around. If you hold shift and you click the middle mouse wheel, you can pan. If you hold shift control and click the middle mouse wheel, you can dolly. So dolly zoom. And there's other methods of navigating, but those are kind of the simple ones. The more you can find many different ways to do the same thing in Blender. You're going to see that, but just get used to that navigation, and you'll be all set. Now, one thing that is important is modes. So right here, this is where you find it in the panel, is you're going to see object mode, edit mode, sculpt mode. That's your interaction with the mesh or the object in front of you. So if I hit edit mode, then I can see the vertices and the edges and the faces, which they're all going to be right down here. Vertices, edges, and faces. Right now it's on vertices, but if I click face, you'll see this little square down in the center of the face. You just right click on it and you got it. You can also shift and click and select multiple ones. When it comes to edges, you can, you're right clicking to select by default. I think you can change that, but if you can shift right click to select multiple ones. Press A to clear your selection, A to select all. It's kind of like a toggle. You can press B to do a box selection, which is really handy. So A and B and A, so that makes it very simple there. You can also begin to modify the object that's in front of you. For now, I'm going to do a loop cut just to show you this. And when you click loop cut, it automatically does a slide afterwards. If you want it to be just in the center, then you can just right click and it will drop it in the center. And if you notice down here, you're gonna have some options for like numbers of cuts, You know, how smooth is this going to be and stuff like that, fall off, and some other things. But if you don't use these options and you change modes, like you go to object mode and then you go back to edit mode, those options are gone. So you got to utilize them while they're there, or else they're just going to disappear. So I hit A to clear my selection. Now when you're selecting edges, this is important too. You hold down Alt and right click, it's going to select the whole entire edge loop. And sometimes when you have strange topology, it's not going to select everything. So you can just hold down Shift, Alt, and then right click again to select the rest of the edge loop or another edge loop, whatever you're doing there. And then you can do all sorts of things. Like on this top, I'm just going to have to Shift select all of these, or I could have selected the face, either way. But with most things in Blender, like you have a bunch of transform and modifiers over here to the left, but I know that there's one that's not up here, and it's called bevel, and it's really handy. So you just press spacebar, and you can basically search for anything you're going to find in Blender. So I'm going to search bevel, and go down and hit bevel, and it's going to bring this up, and I can, you know, click and do a bevel there. And before I lose these options down in the left hand corner, I'm going to go ahead and smooth it out a little bit, and switch back over to object mode, then edit mode. You'll see they disappeared. So this is basically starting to modify objects. Now when you start moving them around, you can use either the manipulators or you can use the hotkeys. So G is going to automatically grab the object, and you're just going to be kind of floating here. But you can also tell it what axis you meant to grab it along. So you could say either Z, X, or Y. And if you want to get really fun with this, you can say Shift Z, and you're going to be moving along two axes. You could say Shift X, it's going to be along those two axes. Shift Y is along these two axes. The more you use it, the more comfortable you'll be with it. But you could also use these manipulators down here. So that's going to be scale, and this is going to be, you know, rotate. Of course, you could just say R and rotate with the hotkey and say X. I want to rotate on the X, and just rotate on X, or Z and just rotate on Z, or Y and rotate on Y, or Shift Z and rotate only in that axis, Shift X, rotate in that axis, Shift Y, rotate in that axis. The same thing is going to go for scale. So S for scale, I could say Z for scale, X for scale, Y for scale, or I could say Shift Z, Shift X, Shift Y, and I think you get the picture there. There's a lot, but one of the most confusing things in Blender is this cursor, and this transform widget and the cursor and what their relationship is to each other. At first it seems kind of indirect, like how you're using it, especially with this cursor. You're like, okay, here's a grid point. I click there, it looks like maybe it's on the grid point, but you start moving around and you're like, oh no, that's in left field. What the heck is the deal with that? What is the purpose of this cursor? You know? So the cursor is great because it's linked with your widget here. I don't know the exact name, the selection or the widget or something like that. It's linked, they're linked together, so you can do movement operations with them. And in order to find these initially, when you start, you're just going to have to call it cursor, and you can see all the options for this cursor. So if I wanted to put the cursor back into the center like it was when you first started up Blender, snap cursor to center, boom, it's there. And then the other one, I think you just have to search active. Yeah, So let's see. Maybe that's in object mode. No. Edit mode. All right. Active. Maybe I was. Let's see. Snap cursor to active. Active. Or selection, sorry. I do that almost every time. Selection. Where your widget is considered your selection. So if you, okay, snap selection to cursor. It's going to move your selection to where the cursor is. Now, if you notice, we've edited this geometry, and the cursor is not actually in the center of the geometry. And if you're doing something with symmetry, you might kind of want that. So it's a little bit confusing on how to get my widget or my cursor or whatever back to the center of this geometry. And for some reason, I don't know exactly what to search in the search, but I know where it lives in the UI. It's under Mesh Transform. And when you're in object mode, Mesh Transform, and you can say where the origin is. So this widget, where that's going to be on your object. So you say, let's see, transform. If you said origin to center of mass, it's going to drop that back to the center of mass of the newly modified object. So if I said scale X or Y, nope, Z, sorry. If I said scale Z, let me see, let's see, selection to cursor, that's pretty much centered, but you can also make sure that's in there. Yeah, okay, so here, this will give me a reason to demonstrate an extrude. So if you go back into edit mode, which you have to change if you want to start modifying the object again, and you select a face, up here you have all these extrude options, but you can just hit E. And E is going to be very simple. Simple way to extrude. Another good one is I, which is inset. And hit E again, and you can begin extruding. All these options are up here on your toolbar on the left, but hotkeys make it much easier, and so do the pie menus. The pie menus really make it simple. But now when you go back into object mode, your cursor is not exactly in the center of mass anymore. So if you go to object, transform, and then put it back in the center of mass, there it is. So you can kind of have the symmetry again, but then snap selection to cursor is going to bring it back to the grid, and this is really handy. That's a really simple explanation of how those are linked, and it can get really useful. It just depends on what you're trying to create and what your approach is, but it can be extremely powerful and useful, and all at the same time very confusing, especially for me when I first started using Blender. So with that out of the way, let's see, we can talk about, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and drop back into object mode and explain this here. If you press Shift A and create a new cube, and you move it out, then you have two objects here, and you're like, okay, well, I was wanting, oh, that's a pie menu. I was wanting to connect this face right here to this face. Well, how do I do that? Because when I go into edit mode, I don't have options on this one, but I have options on this one like the edges and stuff like that, you know, but I can't select a thing over on this other one. Well, the objects need to be joined. So if you go back into object mode, shift and select both of the ones that you want. Now I have mine set up to like a pie menu right here where I can just go to join and separate, but because that's how I like to work. If you just say join, boom, they're joined. So now when you hit edit mode, which you can do by tab, but that pie menu has to be enabled in your add-ons to do that. By default, it will just cycle through the modes. But now that you're in edit mode, which you can go right here and do, click on your face, select your face, select this face, and you can hit X or delete. X will bring up the menu and just say, I want to delete those faces. And so that's really simple. What you do from here is you're going to want to go into edge mode, and there's a couple ways to bridge this thing. So first, I'm going to select both of the edges I want and just press F, and that's going to fill. Or I could select this and say bridge. Ta-da! Very nice. So now if I was to go in here and use what's called a modifier, and I put like a subdivision surface on it, you can see that those are actually connected. But we're not going to get into the modifiers just yet. Right now, there's another thing that I want to explain, and that would be A, B. B is box select. You grab the vertices, and over here, or you can also, let's see, yeah, you can also just search for merge or set it up to a pie menu. You could say where you want these vertices to merge. So if I said center, they're going to merge to the center, which is great. So you could select, you know, 2 vertices and merge them if you're doing certain things. You'll find all kinds of uses for that, I assure you. So let's see. The next thing would be, I'm going to undo some of these things, and yeah. All right, now we are going to do a modifier, and modifiers are basically these individual operations, and there's a wealth of them down here. There's tons of operations that you can do in Blender. You know, it's kind of like these, but a little bit more advanced. They have options. So say that you want to, I mean, you could do quite a bit. Triangulate is, oh, whoops. It's only going to do one face that I have selected, I think. Nope. Well, triangulate is just going to turn every 4 face, or it's going to make everything a planar face, so it's going to be triangles. It's not exactly that fun. There's so many different modifiers in here, and it's kind of hard to start because it really depends on what you want. And each of them have, here, we'll do an array. Each of them have their specific uses. So, you know, I could say that I want it to offset like that, and then I want there to be, you know, a ton of them. And if I like my results there, I can just hit apply. Oh, I have to be in object mode to apply that. So apply, and then I can modify what I've just modified. So if I add another modifier like mirror, you know, I can get a completely different effect on the same thing, and you have options down here, and you just apply it. Now this is a pretty fun one here. We'll do one more modifier, and I'll let you figure out the rest on your own. It's a deformer modification. It's called lattice, And right here, you're going to have to go and create a lattice for this to interact with. And I'm just going to scale it up a little bit. Let me see. S, X. And I'm going to kind of box that in. S, Y, to do that. And then up here you have a lattice or object data, but the lattice shows up in here, and you have some options to subdivide it up. And you'll see why we're doing that here in a second. But okay, say that I have the resolution that I want on my lattice. I go back into this object, and I see the modifier lattice here, because whatever you applied it to, that's where it's going to show up under the modifiers, so you have to click it. I'm going to select the lattice, and now when I select the actual lattice and I go into edit mode, I can, let's see, box select, and then down here, just to kind of show some things you can do, I'm going to enable proportional editing, and I'm going to do a sphere. So when I begin to move this, I can scroll my mouse wheel, and it's kind of like soft select if you've ever used like Maya or something like that. And the lattice allows me to modify this cage, which in turn modifies the mesh. And proportional editing is very useful. You know, so is something like snap, which I think by default it's snap to grid. So I don't know if you can see. Yeah, there we go. Boop, boop. Whereas if you don't have snap on, it's a free movement. It's really smooth. But you can come up with different settings for snap and use it according to, you know, how you want. A lot of times people use lattice for animations, but you can use it for modeling too. When you pull, let me see. Yeah, if you take it out, you know, it obviously doesn't deform. Anyway, so you can apply that there, and then delete your lattice, and the object will be deformed in the way that you want it to be deformed. All right, another thing is, let's see, separate. So I am going to go into edit mode, say A, B. I'm going to select these faces. Say I only wanted that part out. You just separate it from the mesh, and you could say by loose parts or something like that. And let me see. Okay. There we go. So you've got just this single one. And something that's handy is there's mirror modifiers, but there's also just straight mirror, and it's the interactive mirror. You just click the middle mouse button and you drag it in the position you want to mirror it. Oh, sorry. Click the middle mouse button. When you do it, and you can get to it, click the middle mouse button, drag it where you want to mirror it, hit enter, and it will mirror your object. And I thought that maybe when mirroring it, okay, maybe this will do it. Up here, when you have the object here, all your translation attributes are up here. So you could just click and drag to do the translations, you know, through this, if you're more comfortable with knowing the orthographic data there. So like the, what is it? It's like 3D space coordinates. There's a better name for it, but I think you get what I'm saying. Like X is 0, Y 0, Z 0, but if you start doing different degrees, you're going to have a unique rotation there, which that could be pretty detailed. And there's also ways to like freeze transformations and apply them and stuff like that to zero it out when it's not actually at 0. but I won't get into that in this video right now because it's a little bit more into it. But what I wanted to show here was sometimes you will, let me see, you will want to know, I'm going to select the faces on this, you're going to want to know about normals. If you're not familiar with normals, this is just a quick, let me see, display, show, hide, let me see, normals, and let me see, show normals. I don't know exactly, I don't use them through the viewport all that much. Usually you can just there is a way to display your normals, and I think maybe it's down here. Yeah, show normals. Okay, so faces. Now you show the normals and there's these little lines, and that's going to show you the normal direction on your face. Now if you select one and you say flip normals, and this can happen when you're doing maybe this can happen when you're modeling. Your normals can be flipped and it's really strange. I'm going to try to -1 scale these and see if it flips the normals. It might not. No, it didn't. Okay, I think in Maya, if you scale them to a negative value, it will flip the normals, but sometimes you'll get flipped normals. So let me see, if you go to edit mode, A, B, select all the faces, I'm going to say flip normals, and you go back into object mode, you can realize this has quickly become the black sheep of the bunch. You're like, what is the deal with that? And if you're not familiar with normals, it's confusing. It's because your normals are inverted. So if you said, let's see, if you go back to edit mode, which normals are already on, you can see that you don't see them anymore. But if you say flip normals, okay, the normals were off. Okay, if you said flip normals, you can see that something's not right. So just remember that if it gets strange faces like that, and you're wondering why it's shaded so weird, it's because the normals are flipped, and you know, it's kind of important. Anyway, alright, so let's see here. Yeah, most stuff that this is going to give you a whole bunch of options down here for aesthetics and view and stuff, like matte caps, and those are especially useful when sculpting. But you can do your ambient occlusion, and that's going to show how much your geometry is occluded in the viewport. But also, let's see. Also, this kind of gets into rendering, and quickly gonna try to let me see, this is your outliner up here, and you can select anything through the outliner and, you know, modify and edit it accordingly, or you can organize your scene, which I haven't organized anything in here yet. But quickly, to demonstrate the rendering, if you just went to your viewport shading down here and clicked rendered, you know, once you have that light in place, it's going to render under Blender Render. You can also do it under Cycles, but Cycles has to be connected in the node editor. So quickly back to Solid. Another quick thing that I'll describe before I go here is in edit mode, you can, let me see, you can select, sometimes you might like to select by, you can do it with the hotkeys, control, oh, whoops. No, I don't want that. You can do it by the hotkeys, control, number pad, but I'm just going to select, and if I wanted a perfect selection, you can go into perspective here, or drop out of perspective, and select these faces. You can also turn limit to selected off, and it's going to be it's going to select like it would in wireframe, which is awesome. So it's going to select through the faces, and there you go, you got them all. And this is just to demonstrate a method of extruding. When you extrude this way, and you're like, okay, that's not exactly what I wanted there. You can, I think, you can extrude individually. I'm going to set this pivot point back to what it was, which was active element. You can extrude individuals, and kind of gives a pretty cool effect. Now, it kind of extruded in a strange way, but if you had your pivot point down here set to individual origin, it's going to extrude along these normal lines for the face. So if I said extrude into, oh, it should, maybe not. I know that if you are on active element and you hit scale, then those are going to scale as like a group. But if you're on individual origins and you hit scale, they're going to scale individually. And it has to do with the normal, but I'm not exactly sure. I'll have to look into that more. But that gives you options when you're modeling to do quite a bit of stuff. And I hope this video has been helpful. Quickly, I'll go through some of the pie menus I set up, which I would definitely recommend pie menus. This is for my model operations here. You can do all the modifiers and everything. Mainly, it's so where I can work with an unobstructed interface. But here's your edit mode, object mode. It's a toggle. You can, your views. I like the selection to be all set up to one cursor. And the let's see, you've got the an alignment to where you can align things to 0, and your selection methods. And some of these were Python scripts written by this guy named Wazoo. He did some pie menus. They're really great. But the pie menu editor, like I've customized, has been through Rayo's pie menu editor, which is amazing. It really helped me dig into and learn a lot of things in Blender. It's about $10 or $15 on Gumroad. I would recommend that. It's probably my favorite add-on that I've used in Blender. But yeah, hopefully this video has been helpful to show you a bunch of things that are hard to understand at first, and kind of show you what you can do with Blender. Look forward to showing you a sculpting video next. Alright guys.